Think about the last time you sat in a classroom. You were told where to sit. You were told when to speak. You were told when to eat, when to move, and when to stop thinking about one thing and start thinking about another. A bell rang, and your brain was expected to switch subjects instantly. You were graded not on how creatively you thought, but on how accurately you repeated what you were told. And if you questioned any of it, you were sent to the principal's office. You probably thought that was just how school worked, but the blueprint was drawn long before you were born, and it was never drawn with you in mind. Modern compulsory schooling was not designed by educators. It was designed by a government that needed soldiers and factory workers, and it was designed to produce them as efficiently as possible, which it did. In the early 19th century, Prussia was facing a crisis. It had just been humiliated by Napoleon at the Battle of Jena in 1806. The army collapsed. The state needed to rebuild fast. The solution its leaders landed on was not better weapons or stronger generals. It was a new kind of citizen, one who followed orders without question, showed up on time and suppressed individual impulse in service of the collective. So Prussia built the first modern compulsory school system in the world. Problem solved, mostly for them. Historian John Taylor Gatto spent 30 years as a New York City schoolteacher before becoming one of its loudest critics. Prussian educational theorists explicitly stated their goals. The system was not designed to produce independent thinkers. It was designed to produce what they called the good citizen, someone who could be managed, whose sense of self was tied to institutional approval, someone who needed the system to tell them they were doing well. Sound familiar? The Prussian model spread fast. American industrialists funded reform movements that imported the structure wholesale. The Industrial Revolution needed workers who showed up on time, followed instructions, and did not ask too many questions about why things were done a certain way. A school that trained children to sit still, obey bells, and defer to authority was not an accident. It was a pipeline, a very well-funded, very deliberate pipeline, and it worked so well that a century later, nobody even thought to question it. Educator Sir Ken Robinson argued for decades that this structure actively destroys something children are born with. In his 2006 TED Talk, Robinson argued that creativity is not taught in schools. It is educated out of them. Children who enter school as natural experimenters and questioners are systematically trained to fear being wrong, and a person who is afraid of being wrong will never try anything original, which, again, was rather the point. The structure of the school day encodes this lesson without ever saying it out loud. Subjects chopped into rigid, disconnected blocks. Hours of sitting still despite what neuroscientists now know about movement and memory. Standardized testing that rewards the memorization of correct answers over original thought. And a grading system that spends 13 years teaching your brain to associate curiosity with the threat of judgment. Psychologist Peter Gray at Boston College found that children who direct their own learning develop deeper problem-solving abilities and greater resilience than those whose learning is entirely managed by adults. The very thing school spends 13 years stripping away, autonomy, turns out to be the single most important ingredient for a functioning human brain. They published the research, built the curriculum anyway. But here is what makes this more than a critique of education. The obedience training does not stop at graduation. The need for external validation, the discomfort with open-ended problems, the instinct to wait for authority to tell you what to do next. These are not personality traits. They are learned behaviors, installed by a system that needed you to have them. The most successful people alive did not succeed because they were good at school. Most of them were not. They succeeded because somewhere along the way, they had the audacity to unlearn what school taught them about themselves. They stopped waiting for permission. They stopped needing a grade to know their work had value. They stopped mistaking compliance for intelligence. Nothing was wrong with them. The diagnosis was always the institution, never the child. The system was working exactly as designed, and so was the quiet discomfort you felt every time a bell told your brain to stop thinking and move on. You sat in those classrooms for over a decade. You were graded, sorted, ranked, and managed. And the most important thing you were never taught was the one thing the system could not afford to teach you.